Welcome back. We've been getting a bunch of headlines from Delhi on the redefinition of foreign direct investment, a composite definition, hopefully at simplifying the problem. Basically, it appears to say that all investment by non-resident Indian entities will be counted as FDI, foreign investment, and all investment by entities which are owned and controlled by Indians, resident Indians that is, will not be counted in the FDI. Does this simplify the problems for those making foreign investments? Who benefits from this? Akhil Hirani, the managing partner at Majmudar and Company, joins us. So does Vyapak Desai, the head of capital markets at Nishit Desai Associates. Akhil, you go first. Does it really make life simple, at least for that small category of FDI?
Actually, it does not, because the press release is fairly loosely worded, and what it says is that the indirect foreign investment in case of Indian companies which is owned and controlled, in quote unquote, by resident Indian citizens and Indian companies will not be taken into account. Now, what is owned and controlled is an age-old debate, and there is no clarity which has been thrown by the Cabinet Committee on that issue. There are several rulings under the Companies Act and also under the SEBI takeover regulations that a company can be owned and controlled by not owning a single share even in that company, or even if you can simply control the composition of the board of directors. So there are different permutations and combinations of ownership and control, and that has really not been addressed, which will probably lead to significant confusion going forward.
Vyapak, do you concur with that view and the same fact of owned and control, and does it make a material difference when it comes to that small cluster of FDI investment?
Yeah, I think to some extent I agree with Akhil. See, the way the new press release reads, at least it clarifies one aspect, that so far as the Indian holding company is owned and controlled by resident Indians, they won't be, the downline subsidiaries won't be attracted so far as the foreign direct investments in the holding companies are concerned. Now, at least this is to that extent a welcome move, that there is some clarification. But yes, the definition as to how owned and controlled would be determined is not clear. But then there are certain parameters which you can apply, as whether effective management is with Indian citizens, or if majority shareholding under the as defined under the Companies Act is with the Indian citizens. Possibly you will be able to interpret that such an holding company is owned and controlled by resident Indians, and to that extent the indirect shareholding would not be counted for such downline.
Vyapak, is there widespread agreement on the terms you are using, effective ownership and control? If there isn't, then you will again be going to FIPB for a larger number of cases, won't you?
Correct. There is no definite definition or interpretation for such terms, but then there are enough precedents and enough jurisprudence to ensure that you are interpreting it in the right spirit. So to that extent, if you are able to show that the majority shareholder, say 51%, at least now it is clear that to the extent the majority ownership is with Indian, just because there is 1 or 2 or 5% of foreign investment in an holding company, that won't attract Press Note 9 or indirect foreign shareholding. So to that extent, at least there would be enough clarity and less of confusion. And the confusion only lies now to interpretation of companies where there may not be majority shareholding of an Indian citizen, but still you want to define such companies as owned and controlled by an Indian citizen.
Akhil, would you agree that there is at least this kind of a simplification that has come from the government? And more importantly, the whole idea of private equity has not yet been handled. Wasn't there a buzz that they will define it differently?
No, absolutely right. I think there's been significant debate on, the private equity funds as being treated as a separate class of investors, but there is nothing to that effect in the press release. And so, they will effectively continue to be treated as a foreign direct investor. I think the other point that I'd like to bring out also is that one will have to look at this press release from a very sector-specific viewpoint, because if you look at the insurance sector, for example, some of these structures which are currently sought to be outlined in this press release were already prevalent some years ago in the insurance space, where you had a sectoral cap of 26%, but then the foreign investor typically had to bring in more cash, and so then they created another company, and the foreign investment came through that other company in the form of a loan or a deposit or something on those lines. And then the IRDA actually amended the act and clarified that, only what was directly into the Indian operating company would be FDI, and anything else would be a breach of FDI. So you've got, that thinking happening at one regulator, which is the IRDA. And then, of course, the TRAI on the telecom side has also taken some views, in the past on the Vodafone cases, and also, in cases where we've been involved with a few other telecom companies on what is ownership and what is control in Indian hands. So I think there could be conflicts between regulators in different sectors and the FIPB. And so I think that also could have been addressed in some way through this press release, which is not.
But it is not sought to do that. All right, Akhil and Vyapak, thank you very much for joining us with those preliminary thoughts. The Home Minister speaking there. We'll come back with more from him.